The shuttle broke through the clouds of Prime, and Sergeant Jake Collins got his first look at the alien world below. Massive crystalline towers rose from the ground like frozen lightning bolts. The entire city sparkled under the light of 3 distant suns. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest tight, but Jake kept his face calm and professional. He was a soldier, not a tourist. Approaching the royal landing platform, the pilot announced over the speakers. Jake stood with the rest of the security team. There were 6 of them in total, assigned to protect Ambassador Dawson during humanity's first diplomatic mission to the Empire. They were powerful. They had conquered dozens of star systems and commanded one of the largest fleets in the known galaxy. Earth needed allies, and they were at the top of the list. The shuttle touched down with a soft hiss. The doors opened, and warm air rushed inside carrying a sweet smell like honey mixed with flowers. Jake stepped out first, his hand resting near his sidearm as he scanned the area. What he saw made him pause for just a moment. They were waiting for them. They stood in perfect formation, tall and elegant creatures that looked like a blend of mantis and butterfly. Their bodies were covered in shimmering scales that changed color with every movement. Delicate wings folded against their backs, and their faces held large compound eyes that reflected the light like precious gems. But Jake also noticed their claws, long, curved, and sharp enough to cut through metal. These were not peaceful creatures. They were warriors who had simply learned to dress their violence in beauty. At the front of the formation stood a female who was taller than the rest. Her scales were deep purple mixed with silver, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Her eyes locked onto Jake immediately, and he saw something in them that he recognized from 100 battlefields. Contempt. "I am Commander," she said. Her voice was smooth but cold. "I serve as the personal guard to Queen. You will follow me to the palace." Ambassador Dawson stepped forward with a warm smile. "Thank you, Commander. We are honored to be guests of the Empire. I hope this is the beginning of a long friendship between our peoples." Did not return the smile. Her eyes moved over the human delegation like someone examining insects. "Follow me," she repeated, then turned and walked toward the palace without waiting for a response. Jake fell into step with his team, keeping the ambassador safely in the middle of their formation. As they walked, he noticed the soldiers whispering to each other. Their compound eyes kept drifting toward the humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to open disgust. The palace was even more impressive up close. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. Ancient carvings depicted warriors defeating massive creatures and conquering distant worlds. Everything about this place was designed to remind visitors of one simple fact: they were powerful, and they knew it. Commander stopped suddenly and turned to face the humans. Her wings spread slightly, making her appear even larger. "Tell me something, Ambassador," she said. "Why did your people send such a small delegation, and why are your guards so fragile?" Ambassador Dawson kept her composure. "I am not sure I understand your question, Commander." Stepped closer to Jake, studying him with obvious disgust. "Look at you. No claws, no armor, no venom. Your skin is so soft that a hatchling could tear through it. Your bones are hollow compared to ours. You live for what, 80 years? Perhaps 100 if you are lucky." She made a sound that might have been laughter. "My grandmother has hunting trophies older than your entire species has traveled among the stars." The other soldiers chittered with amusement. Jake said nothing. He kept his eyes forward and his expression neutral. This seemed to irritate even more. She circled him slowly, like a predator examining prey. "You do not respond to insults. Is this because humans have no pride? Or is it because you know that I speak the truth? Your kind are prey animals. It is a miracle that you learned to build ships at all. Perhaps you found the technology in ruins left by a real civilization." "Commander," Ambassador Dawson interrupted, "we are here to discuss an alliance, not to compare biological advantages. Every species has its strengths." turned her cold gaze to the ambassador. Strengths. What strengths could humans possibly offer the Empire? We have conquered worlds that would destroy your fragile bodies in moments. We have fought enemies that your minds cannot even imagine. What do you have? Soft skin and short lives. She leaned closer to Jake until her face was just inches from his. If I wanted to, little human, I could kill you before your heart beat twice. Your weapons mean nothing. Your training means nothing. You are nothing. Jake met her gaze calmly. Noted, he said. For a moment something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or confusion. She had expected fear, anger, or at least some reaction. Instead, she got a single word delivered with complete calm. She pulled back and signaled for the group to continue walking. Queen wishes to meet with your ambassador, she said. I do not know why she wastes her time with creatures like you, but it is not my place to question her wisdom. As they continued through the palace, Jake noticed an elderly watching them from a high balcony. Her scales had faded to pale silver with age, and her wings were thin and delicate. But her eyes were sharp and full of ancient intelligence. She studied the humans with an expression very different from the contempt shown by. She looked interested. Jake wondered if that was Queen, and if so, what did she see in the humans that her commander could not? Behind him, whispered to her soldiers in a voice just loud enough for the humans to hear. This alliance will never happen. The Queen will see these creatures for what they are. And when she does, they will be sent back to their little planet to wait for extinction like all weak species eventually do. Jake kept walking. He had been underestimated before. It never bothered him. In his experience, being underestimated was often the greatest advantage a soldier could have. The next morning, Commander found the humans at the training grounds. Jake was running laps around the arena while the other soldiers did exercises on the grass. Their movements were slow and inefficient compared to training, but they kept going with a strange determination that found almost insulting. She walked onto the field with a group of her warriors behind her. Human, she called out, Sergeant Jake Collins. Jake slowed to a stop and turned to face her. Sweat covered his face and soaked his shirt, but his breathing was controlled and steady. Commander, he said, good morning. I have been thinking about our conversation yesterday, said. She spread her wings slightly, casting a shadow over the much smaller human. You did not seem offended by my words. Perhaps you did not understand them, so I will make my meaning clear today. She gestured toward the sparring ring at the center of the training grounds. Fight me, here, now. Let your ambassador and my queen see what happens when a human faces a true warrior. Let there be no more questions about the difference between our species. Jake wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. I appreciate the offer, Commander, but I am here as a diplomatic security officer. My job is to protect Ambassador Dawson, not to provide entertainment. Hissed, her mandibles clicking with anger. Entertainment? You think this is entertainment? She stepped closer, towering over him by nearly 2 feet. I am offering you a chance to prove that your species is worth something, and you refuse because you are afraid. I am not afraid, Jake said calmly. I just do not see the point. We are here to build an alliance, not to fight each other. The point, growled, is that my queen is wasting her time with you. An alliance requires 2 sides of equal value. What value do humans have? I see nothing. I see soft creatures who cannot even defend themselves. I see cowards who hide behind diplomacy because they know they cannot win real battles. The soldiers behind her laughed. Other warriors had gathered around the training grounds to watch, drawn by the noise. Even some of the palace servants had stopped to observe the confrontation. Jake remained still. Think what you want, Commander. My answer is the same. Turned to her soldiers. You see, this is humanity. This is what our queen considers a worthy ally, creatures who run from challenges, creatures who have no warrior spirit. She looked back at Jake with disgust. Your ancestors must weep with shame. She walked away, leaving Jake standing alone in the center of the training grounds. But she made sure everyone heard her final words. Prey animals, nothing more. Later that day, the diplomatic talks continued in the great meeting chamber of the palace. Queen sat on her throne at the head of a long table, with her council members arranged on either side. Ambassador Dawson sat across from them with Jake and two other soldiers standing guard behind her. "We propose a mutual defense treaty," Ambassador Dawson said. She spoke clearly and confidently, her hands resting on the table. Earth and the Empire would agree to support each other against external threats. We would share intelligence, coordinate military strategy, and provide assistance in times of crisis. One of the council members, an elderly with faded green scales, shook his head. "What assistance could humans possibly provide? Your fleet is small. Your weapons are primitive compared to ours. Your soldiers are fragile and short-lived. This treaty would benefit only your species." "With respect," Ambassador Dawson replied, "every alliance benefits both sides in different ways. Humanity brings qualities that are not measured in firepower alone." "Such as?" another council member demanded. Before the ambassador could respond, stepped forward from her position near the throne. "I can answer that question," she said. "I have observed the humans closely since they arrived, and I have seen nothing of value." She walked around the table, gesturing at Jake and the other soldiers. "Look at them. They have no natural weapons. Their bodies are weak. Their senses are dull. They must wear artificial armor because their own skin offers no protection. They must carry weapons because they have no claws, no venom, no strength of their own." She stopped in front of Ambassador Dawson. "Tell me, Ambassador, what could humans possibly offer the mighty Empire? What do you have that we do not already possess in greater measure?" The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to the human diplomat. Ambassador Dawson stood slowly. She was shorter than every in the room, but somehow she seemed to fill the space around her. "We offer endurance," she said. "We offer adaptability. We offer a refusal to surrender that has carried our species through challenges you cannot imagine." Laughed. "Endurance. You think running away slowly is a virtue." "I think," Ambassador Dawson said, "that you have never faced an enemy who simply would not stop. No matter how many times you knocked them down, no matter how badly you hurt them, no matter how impossible the situation seemed. Humanity did not reach the stars because we were strong, Commander. We reached the stars because we do not know how to quit." Queen leaned forward on her throne. Her ancient eyes studied the ambassador with deep interest. She had not spoken during the entire meeting, but something about the human's words had caught her attention. Before anyone could respond, a messenger rushed into the chamber. He was young and his wings trembled with fear. "My queen," he said, bowing low. "Urgent news from the border. Colony Prime 7 is under attack. The swarm has broken through our defensive lines. They are overwhelming our forces." The chamber erupted into chaos. Council members shouted at each other, immediately began calling for her warriors. Only Queen remained calm. She raised one hand, and the room fell silent. "How bad is the situation?" she asked. The messenger swallowed hard. "The colony will fall within 2 days if reinforcements do not arrive, perhaps sooner." Queen nodded slowly. Then she turned her gaze to Ambassador Dawson. "You speak of endurance and refusal to surrender. Would your soldiers be willing to prove these claims, not with words but with action?" Jake felt the eyes of every in the room turn toward him. Ambassador Dawson glanced back at her security team. Jake gave her a small nod. "Yes," the ambassador said, "our soldiers will join your relief force, as observers, of course, unless circumstances require otherwise." Stepped forward, her voice sharp with anger. "My queen, surely you cannot allow these creatures to join a military operation. They will be killed in the first moments of battle. They will be a liability." Queen silenced her with a look. "They will come," she said, and we shall all see what humanity is truly made of. Jake Collins straightened his shoulders. He had a feeling this mission was about to become very interesting. The relief fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Jake Collins saw Prime 7 for the first time. The colony world was burning. Massive fires spread across the surface, and black smoke rose in columns so thick they could be seen from orbit. Warships circled the planet like vultures waiting for their meal to stop moving. "All units prepare for drop," the captain announced over the communications system. "They have breached the colony's eastern perimeter. Our mission is to push them back and evacuate the survivors." Jake checked his weapon and armor one final time. He was assigned to Commander's assault group, a decision that clearly pleased no one. Had not spoken to him during the entire journey. She simply pretended he did not exist. The shook as it entered the atmosphere. Through the small window, Jake watched the ground rush up toward them. The landing zone was a courtyard surrounded by damaged buildings. Soldiers were already fighting there, their energy weapons flashing in the smoke and dust. "Remember," said to her warriors, "the human is here as an observer. Do not waste resources protecting him. If he falls, he falls." The touch down hard. The doors opened, and the warriors poured out with their weapons blazing. Jake followed close behind, his rifle up and ready. They were unlike anything he had seen before. They were massive creatures, nearly 8 feet tall, with bodies covered in thick gray armor plates. Their heads were eyeless, but rows of sensory tendrils waved in the air, tracking movement and heat. Their arms ended in curved blades instead of hands, and they used these blades with terrifying speed. A charged at Jake from the left. He dropped to one knee and fired 3 quick shots into the creature's chest. The first 2 rounds bounced off the armor plates, but the third found a gap near the shoulder joint. They stumbled and fell. Glanced back at him with something that might have been surprise. Then she returned her attention to the battle. For 2 hours they pushed forward through the burning streets. They were skilled warriors, but they had numbers on their side. For every enemy they killed, 2 more seemed to appear. Jake stayed with the group, doing his part, watching for threats, and trying not to think about how tired his body was becoming. Then everything changed. They were crossing a wide plaza when the ground beneath them exploded. A tunneling team had planted charges under the stone, and the blast sent warriors flying in all directions. Jake was thrown against a wall, his ears ringing and his vision blurred. When he looked up, he saw. She was trapped under a fallen pillar. Her legs were pinned, and purple blood pooled beneath her. Her weapon had been thrown out of reach, and walking toward her through the smoke were 3 warriors. "Commander down," someone shouted over the radio. "Moving in. We cannot reach her position. Repeat, we cannot reach her position." Jake pushed himself to his feet. His ribs screamed with pain, probably broken. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead, but he could still move. He could still fight. He ran toward. The first saw him coming and swung its blade arm in a wide arc. Jake ducked under the attack and drove his combat knife into the soft tissue beneath the creature's jaw. They collapsed, but the second one was already on him. A blade sliced across his back, cutting through his armor and into the flesh beneath. Jake spun and fired his rifle point-blank into the sensory tendrils. The creature shrieked and stumbled backward, blinded. Jake finished it with 2 more shots. The third was smarter. It circled around, trying to get behind him. Jake kept moving, keeping himself between the creature, and he was breathing hard now. The wound on his back burned like fire, and he could feel his strength fading. But he did not move from his position. "Human," gasped from beneath the pillar. "What are you doing? Get out of here, save yourself." Jake did not answer. He was focused on the circling in front of him. More were coming. Jake could hear them moving through the ruins around the plaza. 5, maybe 6, maybe more. The reinforcements were still fighting their way toward this position, but they were minutes away at least. Jake had to hold. The next hour was a blur of violence and pain. Jake fought with everything he had. When his rifle ran out of ammunition, he used his pistol. When his pistol ran dry, he used his knife. When his knife broke inside his body, he picked up a piece of metal from the rubble and used that instead. He took wounds that should have killed him: a blade through his left shoulder, a deep gash across his thigh, burns from an acid spit that melted through his armor and scorched his side. Each injury made him slower, weaker, less effective. But he did not fall. He did not retreat. He did not abandon the wounded commander behind him. Watched from where she lay trapped. She had spent her entire life studying warriors. She had fought in a dozen campaigns and killed enemies beyond counting. She thought she understood what courage looked like. She was wrong. What she saw in the human standing over her was something else entirely. It was not the absence of fear. Jake was clearly afraid. His hands shook. His breath came in ragged gasps. Pain twisted his face with every movement. But he kept fighting anyway. 3 more fell, then 2 more. Jake was barely standing now, leaning against a broken wall for support. Blood covered his body, both human and his left arm hung useless at his side, but his eyes were still sharp, still watching, still ready. When the reinforcements finally broke through, they found Jake Collins standing in the center of a ring of bodies. 11 creatures lay dead around him. His weapon, a bent piece of metal, hung from fingers that seemed locked in place. He was covered in wounds that should have been fatal. But he was still standing. He turned his head slowly to look at the soldiers. "The commander," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "Get her out first." Then his eyes rolled back and he collapsed. Watched them carry the human away. She had mocked him. She had called him prey. She had said humans were weak and worthless. She had been wrong about everything. Jake Collins woke up in pain. That was the first thing he noticed. A deep, burning ache that spread through every part of his body. The second thing he noticed was the soft blue light filling the room around him. He was in a medical bay, surrounded by equipment that hummed and clicked with alien technology. A doctor stood beside his bed, studying a floating display filled with symbols Jake could not read. When she saw that he was awake, she made a sound that might have been surprise. "You should not be conscious," she said. "The damage to your body is extensive. By all medical understanding, you should be dead." Jake tried to sit up, but his arms would not cooperate. "How long was I out?" 3 days. The doctor moved closer, examining him with her large, compound eyes. "We have never treated a human before. Your biology is strange to us, but what is most strange is that you survived at all. You suffered wounds that would have killed most species instantly. Yet your heart continued to beat. Your lungs continued to breathe. Your body refused to stop functioning." She paused, studying the data on her display. "We gave you medications to ease your pain and help you sleep, doses that would have kept you unconscious for a week. You woke up in 3 days. She shook her head slowly. "Humans are not as fragile as we believed." The door to the medical bay slid open and Commander walked in. She moved carefully, favoring her right leg. A bandage wrapped around her midsection and fresh scars marked her arms, but she was alive. Because of him. She stopped at the foot of his bed and stood there in silence for a long moment. Jake waited, watching her face for some sign of what she was thinking. The contempt that had been there before was gone. In its place was something he could not quite identify. "The doctors say you will recover fully," said at last. "It will take time. Human bodies heal slower than ours, but you will live." "Good to know," Jake replied. Another long silence. Seemed to be struggling with something. Her mandibles clicked softly and her wings twitched against her back. "You saved my life," she said finally. The words came out stiff and awkward, like she was speaking a language she barely understood. "You could have run. You could have hidden. You could have done what any sensible creature would do when facing impossible odds, but instead you stood over me and fought until your body gave out." Jake shrugged, wincing at the pain the movement caused. You were hurt. I was not going to leave you behind. Why? Demanded. I treated you with nothing but disrespect. I called you weak. I called you a coward. I said your species was worthless. Why would you risk your life for someone who showed you such contempt? Jake thought about the question for a moment. Because you needed help, he said simply. That is all that mattered. Stared at him. In her long life as a warrior, she had seen many acts of courage. She had seen soldiers sacrifice themselves to protect their queen. She had seen warriors fight against impossible odds for glory and honor, but she had never seen someone risk everything for a stranger who had treated them like dirt. I do not understand you, she admitted. I do not understand your species at all. That is okay, Jake said. We are still figuring ourselves out too. For the first time since they met, something like a smile crossed his face. It was small and uncertain, but it was real. Rest now, human. You have earned it. When you are recovered, we will speak again. She turned and left the medical bay without another word. 2 days later, Jake was strong enough to walk with assistance. The doctors were amazed at his recovery speed. According to their calculations, he should have been bedridden for weeks. Instead, he was already moving through the corridors of the flagship, determined to rejoin his team. He was on his way back to his quarters when a guard intercepted him. Sergeant Collins, the guard said with a slight bow, Queen requests your presence in her private chambers. Jake followed the guard through winding hallways until they reached a door carved with ancient symbols. The guard stepped aside, and the door slid open silently. Queen sat in a simple chair by a window that looked out at the stars. She was smaller than Jake had expected, her scales faded with age, her wings thin and delicate, but her eyes held the weight of centuries. Please sit, she said, gesturing to a chair across from her. I have been waiting to speak with you privately. Jake lowered himself into the chair carefully, still mindful of his injuries. I am honored, Your Majesty. The Queen studied him for a long moment. I have lived for over 600 years, she said. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species evolve from primitive creatures into masters of the stars. I have learned that the universe rarely works the way we expect it to. She leaned forward slightly. When I first proposed this alliance with humanity, my advisors thought I had lost my mind. Humans are weak, they said. Humans are fragile. Humans have nothing to offer us. But I knew something they did not. What was that? Jake asked. I had studied your history. The Queen's eyes seemed to glow with inner light. I read about your wars, your famines, your plagues, your disasters. I read about all the times your species should have been destroyed. And I noticed something remarkable. You never gave up. No matter how bad things became, no matter how hopeless the situation seemed, humans kept fighting, kept struggling, kept surviving. She stood slowly and walked to the window. My people were not always powerful, Sergeant Collins. Long ago, we were small and weak. Other species hunted us for sport. They drove us to the edge of extinction again and again, but we survived. Through unity, through determination, through the same fire that I see burning in humanity. She turned to face him. That is why I want this alliance. Not because of your weapons or your ships, because of your spirit. Because I believe that together our peoples can face any challenge the universe throws at us. Jake stood carefully and faced the ancient queen. I believe that too, Your Majesty. Queen smiled warmly. Good, then we understand each other. She paused, her expression becoming serious. Tomorrow I will address my empire and announce my decision regarding the treaty. I would like you to be present. There is something I wish the entire court to witness. She did not explain further, but Jake had a feeling that tomorrow would change everything. Outside the chamber, hidden in the shadows of the corridor, Commander had heard every word. She looked down at her clawed hands, thinking about everything she had believed about humans. Everything she had been wrong about. Tomorrow, she would have a chance to make things right. The grand throne room of the Empire was filled with more beings than Jake Collins had ever seen in one place. Thousands of nobles, warriors, diplomats, and officials packed the massive chamber. Floating cameras broadcast the event to billions more across their territory. This was not just a royal address. This was history in the making. Jake stood with Ambassador Dawson and the rest of the human delegation near the front of the room. He was still healing, still moving carefully to avoid reopening his wounds, but he refused to miss this moment. Queen entered through a doorway behind the throne, and the entire room fell silent. She walked slowly, her ancient body carrying the weight of 6 centuries of leadership. 2 guards flanked her, and behind them came Commander, her face unreadable. The Queen settled onto her throne and looked out at the assembled crowd. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the chamber, amplified by hidden technology. "My children," she began, "I have ruled this empire for longer than most species have existed. I have guided us through wars, famines, and disasters that should have destroyed us. I have made decisions that changed the course of history, and today I make another such decision." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Many of you have questioned my interest in the humans. You have called them weak, fragile, unworthy of alliance with the mighty. You have looked at their soft skin and their short lives and seen nothing of value." A murmur ran through the crowd. Jake felt thousands of alien eyes turned toward him. "I will tell you what I see," the Queen continued. "I see a species that has faced extinction countless times and never surrendered. I see a species that has survived through ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions of their kind. I see a species that reached for the stars not because it was easy, but because it was hard. Because they refused to accept limits. Because they do not know how to quit." She leaned forward on her throne. "5 days ago at the Battle of Prime 7, I saw the truth of humanity with my own eyes, or rather, through the eyes of my commander." The Queen gestured, and a massive holographic display appeared above the crowd. It showed the plaza where Jake had made his stand. The footage was captured by his own armor cameras. Every person in the room watched as a single human fought against wave after wave of warriors. They watched him take wounds that should have been fatal. They watched him fall and rise again. They watched him refuse to abandon the commander trapped behind him. When the footage ended, the room was completely silent. "Sergeant Jake Collins," the Queen said, "please step forward." Jake walked toward the throne. Every step hurt. His body screamed for rest. But he kept moving, kept his back straight, kept his eyes on the ancient Queen watching him approach. He stopped at the foot of the throne and bowed his head respectfully. "This man," the Queen announced, "is the reason Commander is alive today. He stood alone against impossible odds. He took wounds that would have killed any of us. And he did not stop fighting until reinforcements arrived, not for glory, not for reward, simply because a fellow warrior needed his help." She stood from her throne. "I have lived for 600 years and I have never witnessed courage like this. This is what humanity offers us, not weapons, not ships, something far more valuable, a spirit that cannot be broken, a will that cannot be bent, a determination that burns like the heart of a star." The Queen looked out at her people. "I am announcing, here and now, a formal alliance between the Empire and the people of Earth. We will stand together as equals. We will face our enemies as one. And together, we will be unstoppable." The crowd erupted in a mixture of reactions. Some cheered. Some whispered in confusion. Some simply stared at the small human standing before their Queen. But the Queen was not finished. "Commander," she called out, "step forward." Walk to stand beside Jake, her expression tense. She knew what was coming. "Commander," the Queen said, "when the humans first arrived, you were among those who mocked them most openly. You called them prey animals. You said they were weak and worthless. You questioned my wisdom in pursuing this alliance." Lowered her head. "I did, my Queen." "Do you still believe those things?" The entire room held its breath, was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion she could not hide. "No, my queen, I was wrong." She turned to face Jake directly. "I was wrong about everything. I have never seen courage like what this human showed. He saved my life when he had every reason to let me die. He stood against enemies that would have terrified our bravest warriors. He did not fight for honor or glory or reward. He fought because it was the right thing to do." She paused, her wings trembling slightly. "I have spent my entire life as a warrior. I thought I understood what strength meant. I was a fool. True strength is not measured in claws or venom or armored scales. True strength is measured in the willingness to stand when your body begs you to fall, to protect others when you can barely protect yourself, to keep fighting when all hope seems lost." She looked at Jake with something that might have been respect, perhaps even admiration. "Humans have this strength, more than any species I have ever encountered." Queen nodded slowly. "Then you understand why I have made my decision." She raised her voice for all to hear. "Commander, I order you to kneel before Sergeant Jake Collins of Earth." A shocked gasp ran through the crowd. Warriors did not kneel to anyone except their queen. This was unprecedented. But did not hesitate. She lowered herself to one knee before Jake, her head bowed. The proud commander who had mocked him just days ago now knelt at his feet in front of billions of witnesses. "Sergeant Jake Collins," the Queen announced, "I hereby grant you the title of Warrior of the Empire. This honor has never been given to anyone outside our species. You have earned it through blood and sacrifice and a courage that transcends biology. Rise and acknowledge this warrior as your equal." Stood, for a moment, she and Jake simply looked at each other. Then Jake extended his hand, palm open, in the human gesture of friendship and respect. Hesitated for only a second. Then she reached out and took his hand in her clawed grip. The crowd erupted in cheers. "I owe you a debt I can never repay," said quietly, her voice lost beneath the noise of the crowd. "But I will spend the rest of my life trying." Jake smiled. "You do not owe me anything, Commander. We are allies now. That is what allies do for each other." Mandibles clicked in what Jake was starting to recognize as laughter. "Then as allies, I make you a promise. Whatever battles lie ahead, whatever enemies we face, I will stand beside you. Not because of duty, not because of my queen's command, because I choose to, because you have shown me what true warriors look like." Jake looked out at the cheering crowd, at Ambassador Dawson smiling with tears in her eyes, at Queen watching them with ancient wisdom in her gaze. Humanity had come to this world as strangers. They had been mocked and underestimated and dismissed as weak, but they had proven themselves in the only way that truly mattered. Through action, through sacrifice, through refusing to give up. The alliance between humans and would change the galaxy forever. And it all began with one soldier who refused to leave a fallen comrade behind. Jake Collins looked at the friend standing beside him, the Queen watching from her throne, and the future stretching out before them like an ocean of stars. For the first time in a very long time, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be.